Brandon Dawson, and this is The Distiller, a podcast about how we find meaningful work and how we find meaning in the work we do. My guest for this episode is Django Kroner, owner and chief tree lover of the Canopy Crew. Canopy Crew is a group of arborists and custom treehouse builders based out of Southern Ohio and Northern Kentucky. Even if you don't live in Southern Ohio, you may have heard of the Canopy Crew from their Animal Planet television pilot Canopy Kings that first aired in 2017 and is still airing here and there around the world. Django Kroner literally grew up in the trees and somehow has successfully made a life out of his first love of climbing and caring for trees. If you're wondering, as I did, how you possibly turn a childhood of climbing trees into a growing tree care and treehouse building empire, then just stick around. It's a fun story. We met Django on a Friday afternoon at Taft's Ale House in Cincinnati, or more specifically, their cozier downstairs bar, Nellie's Tap Room. Over a couple of IPAs, Django and I talked about, yes, how a kid who climbed trees to escape his older brothers created a thriving business that's getting international attention. But we also talked about what it really means to be brave enough to follow your dreams, no matter where they lead. It's a conversation full of whimsy, to be sure. We're talking about building tree houses, but it's directly applicable to the decisions we all make, no matter what we do for a living. And I really loved that. So here it is. Here is my conversation with Canopy Kings and Canopy Crew treehouse builder and arborist Django Kroner on The Distiller. Cheers.
Cheers.
Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Good to finally meet you. I've heard your name, obviously, around Cincinnati a lot over the years, and I think we have some mutual friends in common. But I want to start with, this is my favorite question. I'm particularly excited to hear you answer it. What do you do for a living?
I was asking myself that when I was driving earlier this week. Normally I say that I'm a treehouse builder. But it is of course way more than that, and also at times less than that. So I think that I was toying around with I am in treehouse development.
Okay.
I think it's probably more accurate. And in the nitty gritty sense, I'm definitely a tree climber.
Okay.
So that kind of is always true.
All right. Aside from that, what's your official title? You're the president, the owner?
I'm the owner of the Canopy Crew.
Of the Canopy Crew. Okay. And the Canopy Crew does a bunch of different things.
Yeah. So we have treehouse rentals in the Red River Gorge. We build custom tree houses for clients around the country or world, and we have an arborist service in Cincinnati here.
Okay. Yeah. Fantastic. So basically everything related to trees.
Yes,
Live in the trees, care for them.
anything in the trees, we will probably do it at some time in the year.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So give us a little bit of the background. There's a little bit of your story on the website. You moved to the Red River Gorge. People don't know. The River Gorge is in Kentucky. Absolutely beautiful place to hike and to climb. Some of the best climbing in this part of the country.
Yes, definitely, in the world.
Yeah.
So it really started before the gorge.
Okay.
Because tree climbing was really the first love of my life.
Okay.
When I was probably like 7, I started just climbing. It was an instinct in me, and my folks lived in a house with a lot of great maples, and so I started climbing, and I'm the youngest of 4, so naturally there's a lot of sibling abuse that occurs.
Yeah.
So
you got to climb to get away.
Well, so yeah, I mean, there was no chance of me ever physically winning in any kind of fight with my older brother, and but what I realized is that I could climb way better than him, and he was afraid of heights. So anytime it got serious, I started running out into the yard, climb the tree, and just hang out up there until he cooled down.
Right.
So it became a sanctuary. And I really felt safer up in the trees. And as I kind of transitioned into my adult body, I would spend like in high school I'd spend 4 hours a day in the trees. Like I'd watch videos of orangutans and then try to mimic their movement. And I was way into it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're not talking like just childhood fancy. We're talking about you took it even at that age really seriously.
It was, I totally was. I was dedicated, and
Okay.
and I didn't realize. I had no idea then that was would be actually what I followed as an adult. But so eventually that turned into rock climbing because rock climbing has a much bigger community around it, I guess, or it's just a thing that people do more than tree climbing. So I got into rock climbing, and I learned that the Red River Gorge in Kentucky, where I'd been to before, had some world-class rock climbing. So I decided at 19 to move down there to pursue that.
Okay. You moved down to the Red River Gorge. What does that mean to pursue it? Does that mean you live down there in a tent, or you bought a place down there, or how do you at 19 move to pursue climbing? Because it's not an enterprise that's going to generate money for you.
Yeah. So I knew I wanted to rock climb as much as possible, and I knew I wasn't really concerned about money, but obviously you need something.
Just enough to eat at least.
Yeah. And there's in the rock climbing community, there's the sacred climbing bum. It's a totally it's a great thing to be. It's admired and held dear to the heart. So I was not afraid of I did exactly that. I got a tent. I went down in the woods, pitched the tent, set up my little camping stove, and I got a job apprenticing at Red River Gorges. Okay. Aaron, who's running it, was a timber frame cabin builder.
Okay, so Red River Gorges is a I don't even know how to. I mean,
it's a cabin rental
rental place right there in the Daniel Boone Forest, or right on the edge of it.
Yep, they're right in the heart of the geological area.
Okay.
Right when you go through the Native Tunnel.
Okay.
So I was working with Aaron as little as possible as he'd let me, and living in a tent and just climbing as much as possible. So, in the beginning, I was still basically learning the ropes. I was still like a beginner, and just kind of figuring it out and making partners, and also just enjoying the gorge. A big chunk of it for me was, or I guess the reason I like rock climbing is because of the way that you get to interact with nature. You get the perspective on the forest. You get to, be challenged and adrenalized and all the good stuff that comes with that.
And it's also my experience. I haven't done a lot of climbing. I grew up in Idaho. I climbed outside of Boise when I was 18 and 19 quite a bit, for a couple of summers. And it was mostly pretty easy stuff. It was mostly top roping, not a lot of lead climbing. But there are different types of climbing that cause you to rely on people in different ways. And my experience of it is two things. That number one, that camaraderie that you build, even if someone's just belaying you, much less technical climbing or lead climbing on a rope with somebody else where your life is literally in their hands. Plus that kind of Zen, I remember the first experience I ever had of what people now call flow was we climbed for a whole day. And I remember coming down, driving in my friend Reese's Bronco down from Table Rock in Boise, and I couldn't move my fingers. And I thought, at 18, oh my God, I haven't thought about a single thing all day except the rock, which was a wonderful, freeing feeling. And it, unless you've kind of experienced that either in climbing or something else, it's difficult to understand how freeing that actually is to have that realization.
Yeah, I think in the age we live in, it's increasingly more difficult to be present.
Yeah.
And that's the magic of climbing, is that it forces you to be present.
Yeah.
Especially
you're not
when you're
right
pushing
here,
your
right
limits.
now, you're falling.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's the secret of it, the beautiful part.
So how did that translate? You're 19. How long did that last? That sort of Zen climber hippie lifestyle?
So, I was very focused and dedicated, and I had, a series of goals that in my mind were, just where I wanted to get to as a climber. And about 6 months in of living in the tent, the gorge is a really wet place, a lot of rain. I was camped out in the bottomland, very wet, moldy existence, a lot of snakes. And one day I was particularly miserable and sticky and was looking at the tops of the trees and saw how the sun was drying them out. And they were kind of just gently swaying in the breeze. And I just thought to myself how like much nicer it looked up there. And I thought, oh man, I've got a little bit of carpentry skills now, and I know how to climb and rig from rock climbing. So I asked Aaron, who owned the land, I said, hey, can I build a tree house? And he said, go for it. So at that point was the kind of the start of what has now encompassed my life.
And what did that first treehouse look like? Was it just a platform? Was it actually a house?
So I was aware of how complicated construction could become accidentally.
Yeah.
So I went into it very, cautiously, and I spent about 3 months reading and researching the little bit that there was on treehouse building, and just walking around, looking at the trees, and feeling the forest out, and collecting scrap materials. And eventually decided upon a sycamore and a tulip poplar that straddled the creek. So it's a beautiful spot in the forest. And I started climbing the tree, and with the intention of setting my first anchor, and just kept going up and up and up. And I went into it thinking like, 20 feet, it's a nice, comfortable height. And I ended up getting up about 45 feet or so, and I was like, I better stop going up. And I was like, this view is pretty nice. So I went for it, and I put the first anchor in, and it was really simple. So I didn't have any money. So it was all found materials for the most part, and friends, climber friends coming over and helping. So it was a 12 by 10 platform that was all hanging on cables. So when you're up that high and the wind's blowing, the treehouse needs to be able to move freely. Right. And I was all about being exposed to the canopy. That was my mission at the time, was kind of take it for what it's worth and not try to box myself in. So year one was just a platform, no roof. And I had a tarp, and I basically just camped out up there. I had a rope ladder to get up, and I didn't really have much to steal, but for security, I just spaced the rungs like 2.5 feet apart so that nobody...
It's a little difficult to get up unless you're actually a climber.
And it also is pretty scary. So even if you were a climber, if you weren't used to climbing without a rope, then you were probably not going to go up it. And then eventually I ended up putting a roof on, which was felt like the biggest luxury. I was thinking to myself, like, man, how did I not have a roof? Like, what a dumb house that doesn't have a roof. It's the one thing a house is a roof, at least.
Right.
But yeah, I just spent a lot of, it was a really profound time for me, because I was then at this point 20, and pretty much all my friends went off to college, and we're doing the kind of the typical, like, you're getting your life's worth of partying in and socializing, and I was almost alone every night. And I was worried about that. I was like afraid that I was missing out, but at the same time, I learned to live with myself, like just alone, and really just soak in the forest, and it was like a kind of a slow meditation or something, like a slow getting to know yourself kind of experience.
Yeah, absolutely. You were there 3 years.
Yeah, so over those 3 years, I achieved my climbing goals. I kind of like progressed and understood, learned the sport, just kind of slowly started doing what I set out to do.
For maybe climbers that are listening, just talk about like high level, I assume climbing goals means certain level of pitch that you want to be able to climb, numbers that you want to hit. Like, what were those for you?
So the gorge is mostly sport climbing, which is basically like a gymnastic style of climbing. So you're climbing the way you measure it is difficulty. It's not necessarily about how tall the cliff is or anything like that, but it's difficulty. So in the gorge, I really wanted to just be able to climb 513s.
Okay.
So it means nothing to non-climber, but that was my goal. And then I had,
non-climbers may not even know that climbs are actually rated numerically.
Yeah, sure.
And so there's a difficulty standard that you wanted to achieve.
Yeah. Totally. And then I would travel out west for the winters and climb out there, and I had, in that sense, more just classic climbs that I wanted to do.
Yeah.
The biggest and kind of like the center goal was climbing El Capitan in Yosemite.
Yep.
Growing up, my dad would always talk about, like, Pete, there's this rock in California, and people climb it and they sleep on the wall, and he would talk about it in a way that was, like, I could tell he was impressed, you know?
Yeah. Well, that's the climb in the United States.
It has its reputation for a reason.
Yeah, and now, right as we talk about this, Alex Honnold's
Free Solo movie. I'm going to see it tonight.
Coming out. Are you?
I just came to Cincinnati.
Oh, I'm so jealous. I know it's opening tonight. I'm going to see it while it's here for sure.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Cool. Anyway, go ahead. Did you? I have to ask. Did you ever climb El Cap?
Yes. So it plays an integral role in the Canopy Crew story, actually. Okay. So my third year in the gorge, I was feeling less content, which was, I was a pretty content guy at the time, and it was pretty unsettling. But I knew I had my first trip to Yosemite was coming around the corner. We were going to head out west in the winter, climb in the desert, get our crack climbing skills honed in, and then head to Yosemite. So we did just that. We head out west. We spent, I guess it was 4 weeks in Yosemite, and with the whole goal of climbing El Cap. So we ended up spending 5 days on the wall, one of which was just hiding from an epic hailstorm.
Oh, wow.
There's these things called portaledges that you sleep on. And
it's like a tent on a rope.
Yeah.
I mean, but a tiny tent on a rope.
Yeah, it's like a cot that you hang off the wall.
Yep.
So I was belaying my partner, and he was climbing on like one of the most difficult, scary pitches on the whole thing, and the storm starts rolling, and the whole valley started to fill with clouds like a bathtub, and these updrafts started coming through, and the whole portaledge lifted up with me sitting on it, and it was like an instant moment when I realized how small I was, and how like I was totally at the mercy of whatever was going to happen was going to happen.
Well, how tall is that wall?
So El Cap is 3,000 feet, although it is not 3,000 feet all the way across.
Right.
And there's routes of all different heights.
Shorter routes to shorter heights.
And in difficulty, and there's a lot of things to do on it.
Yeah.
It was a super humbling / exciting experience to be up there for the storm, and the whole thing was just, it was a lot like hard labor climbing El Cap. It's not necessarily the movement aspect of it is not the same as other locations such as the gorge. It's a lot more about just put your head down and just keep going up.
It's a marathon. It's not a sprint.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's a lot of pain, a lot of like, just suffering.
Well, when you say you spent, I mean, for people that don't know, when you say you spent 5 days on the wall, that's 5 days on the wall. Not like you go up a little ways and you come down, and you go up a little ways and you come down. It's from the time that you start at the bottom until you get to the top was 5 days, and you slept there on the portaledge, and during the days you're climbing all day, slowly making progress.
Yeah, and the best part of it all, or at least the story-wise, is Yosemite is now a very popular place.
Yeah.
You can't just poop off the side of the wall. So you have to haul it all up with you. Which that part's, whatever, no big deal. But you are with your climbing partner, hanging in a harness off of, a lot of times a single anchor. So you're hip to hip.
Yeah.
And there's nowhere you can go.
It's an intimate space.
Yeah, super intimate, and very, you get some quick bonding. And
whether you want it or not.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, by the time we got to the top, was super satisfying. And, obviously all the things, exhaustion and hunger, and you feel very thin.
Yeah.
But yeah, just totally like that feeling when you finish a big project. And that with climbing, it's kind of notorious that those highs, they come on super strong and then they're gone in like 5 minutes.
Right.
And you're like, oh man, what's next?
Yeah.
So
serotonin drop.
Yeah. So I was up on top of El Cap, and there was a pretty defining moment when I felt like I was ready to turn the page. And I thought it was still going to be in rock climbing, but it turned out that it was to dive back into tree climbing.
Right.
Yeah.
And I want to get there, but just briefly, this whole time you're living in the forest for 3 years, you're going out west. What's your family saying at this time?
They were stoked.
Were they?
I mean, my family's very supportive. As long as you're not being a dumbass. And
well, and this is kind of the opposite. This is the monastic experience of just living by yourself. It's not even like you were in Tibet doing this. You're just down in Kentucky, 3 hours away.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, I think my siblings just kind of laughed at me, but they thought it was cool.
Yeah.
My folks had, probably a little bit of hesitation just in terms of the long-term sustainability, but
yeah.
Once they came down and saw the treehouse, there was definitely a kind of a turning of the page for them of like, oh, this is awesome, and like, this is fun. Like, there's something great to be had here.
Right. It's a real thing. It's not, Yeah. So talk about what turning the page means at that point, and how it, I don't want to jump too far ahead, but like, how does that get you from, I just climbed El Cap and I've been living in the forest for 3 years, to I started this kind of tree empire that you're building now?
It's a good question. I had never thought of myself as an entrepreneur. I'd never been of a business mindset, and I did not care about money. In fact, I kind of thought poorly of people who focus their whole lives on a business. And I swore to myself I would never be so sucked into a meaningless life. And I basically just started thinking about, like, man, what do I want to do, And I guess I was 23, just turned 23, and I went back to Cincinnati and was just staying with my folks. And I was missing the treehouse, definitely, but also feeling pretty lonely at the time, and not really willing to go back into the woods alone. And it was, I guess, just through a lot of idea tumbling around in my head, and kind of soul searching and thinking about, I want to build tree houses. The thing is, when you spend time in a tree house, all you can think about is additions. Like, oh, look at that tree over there. Like, I could do a little bridge out to that, put like an office over there, and then, oh, look at that one. I could connect and do an observatory. And it's impossible not to think of all the add-ons.
Yeah.
So I had a million ideas, and of course I wanted to do them, but I didn't know how, and I didn't really have any resources to do it. So I started to think about money, like, oh, how could I pull this off? And eventually it just kind of churned into, well, you could build tree houses as a business, and then people would pay for your exploits and wanting to, the ideas that you wanted to create. And my siblings are all pretty passionate entrepreneur types, and they definitely, I'm sure, planted that seed in my head at some point.
There's a way to build this into something bigger that's not just where you live. It's something that you can provide for other people. Yeah.
So I knew from the beginning that if I wanted to build tree houses, primarily need to learn a lot about trees. And I shockingly had never thought about the whole arboriculture, like, that whole community. I had never really thought about it. I never thought about being a professional tree climber as a kid or anything like that. But just randomly, I ended up meeting this guy who was a professional tree climber, and we started talking. And
he's a professional tree climber. That's a thing.
Well, an arborist.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's what an arborist is.
Not necessarily, but he cares for the trees. He's not just climbing the trees themselves.
It's not a sport climber. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Okay.
Yeah. So yes, he is taking care of trees, pruning trees, taking down dead trees, that kind of thing.
Okay.
So he also used to live in the gorge in his early days, and he took me under his wing. I just was really just trying to get a job.
Yeah.
And he was an awesome mentor, and basically just schooled me. He was like a hard-ass character who, loved to play pranks on me, and didn't cut me any slack, and it whipped me into shape real quick.
Right on. Yeah. It's funny because I have ideas and things to ask you, and one of the things is about craft, and I would have assumed that when we started talking about how you learned your craft, it was more about construction and less, and not that there's no construction in it, but it's just really interesting to me that the education part that was really heavy for you at the beginning was the arborist part more than the construction part.
Yeah, so two comments on that. One is, straight out of high school, I did AmeriCorps in Milwaukee.
Okay.
And I worked at Habitat for Humanity framing houses.
Okay.
So I did have that.
You had the basic skills.
I mean, if you can call it that. I had seen the world, the construction world. And I'd been around it.
Right.
It certainly wasn't something I was good at,
Yeah, you weren't a journeyman, but you had, you'd seen it done. You know what it looks like when it's done right.
Yeah, but then when I was in the treehouse doing a lot of trying to define my life, I would oftentimes say that the treehouse is just the vehicle to get to the canopy. The canopy is really what it's all about, and I still totally believe that. Like, if you can go out and climb up into the top of the tree and hang out for a few hours, you're going to get just as pure of an experience as you would being in a treehouse, because it's about the tree.
Right. Not about the house.
Yeah, and I mean, people, your everyday person has no idea that is like, my mission or the case. To them, the house is kind of the bait. The house is like, people live in a house. They know what a house is. They see it, and it's like, wow, that's funky. Like, I want to go up there and spend time. And then the tree like seeps into their soul, and they get it. And it is obviously different for every tree house and tree experience, but that going straight to the tree in terms of what your comment was is definitely true. I'm like, tree climbing is like my, I would say, truest self. Or craft.
Yeah. I feel like it might be interesting for somebody that doesn't know who you are or live around here and sort of know the reputation of the Canopy Crew at this point in the discussion to think, whatever, this guy builds tree houses. How many tree houses have you built to this point?
So it depends on how you define it.
How many tree houses has the Canopy Crew built?
Sure. So in tree structures, I think we're around 40.
Okay.
Because we've done things such as tree decks or like meditation pathways elevated through the trees.
Sure.
Or tree zebos kind of thing, or maybe it's a tree house, but within that one treehouse cluster, there's 5 treehouses.
Right,
So it's like, how do you count that? Is that 1 or 5? I don't know.
Right.
So we started counting them off of foundations, platforms in trees. Yeah.
And talk a little bit about the variety of, you just talked about, there's decks, there's platforms. What's the largest cluster of structures you've built in a house up to this point?
So, square footage wise, we built one that was 650 square feet.
Okay.
And that was a live-in treehouse.
Uh-huh.
We did the one that was kind of like a walkway or a canopy tour, like it was supposed to be for walking meditation. We never even really added that one up, but I think we were probably in 30 trees total. So it was like,
Wow.
I mean, you could spend some time walking around, elevated off the ground, and it was awesome. I mean, there's bridges and there's like suspended staircases and
Is that down in the
platforms.
gorge? Where is that?
That's actually in Wilmington, Ohio.
Okay.
Yeah. We've done certainly plenty of kids' tree houses, adult tree houses, and I would say as the company is growing and we're learning who we really are, definitely like adult tree houses or tree houses that you could live in
Yeah.
are what we are specializing
Not
in.
like a play structure.
Yeah, I mean, play is great for all ages,
Yeah.
but kids usually get it already. It's kind of like they don't
You don't have
they
to
don't
convince
need
them.
the lesson,
Yeah.
as much. But yeah, I mean, adult. I built a treehouse and I want to
Right.
use it. I want to be able to fit inside and have my friends over and
Totally.
and
Well,
have my luxuries.
I mentioned I think we have some common friends. Jill and Jonathan Hicks, I think, live right across the street from Red River Gorgeous.
Definitely.
And I've stayed in a couple of their tree houses
Yeah.
over there. I don't know if you've been involved in building those or helping them get those going, but man, that's a magical experience. It's one
Yeah.
thing. I had tree houses as a kid, or raised forts or whatever. But as an adult, like you said, to go up into one of these places and just be there, be in the tree,
Yeah.
in the canopy. It is a transcendent is a funny word to use, but it's a completely different experience. It puts you on a completely different wavelength.
Yeah, it's just a new perspective.
Yeah.
Anytime you have a new perspective on something that you've seen a lot, it's eye-opening.
Yeah.
And I really admire Jonathan and Jill, their lifestyle and the way they've raised their family. And I helped them do the platform for the Flying Squirrel Treehouse, and
Yep.
then they designed it and built it from there.
Yeah. I think that was the one that that was their first one.
Yeah, that's the one they've got.
Yeah. It's gorgeous.
Yeah, totally. It's
Down
such
there.
in the the fern gully underneath it. It's
so beautiful.
kind of prehistoric feeling up there.
Yeah, and let me tell you, if you're listening to this and you're somewhere else in the country and you've never been to the Daniel Boone National Forest or to the Red River Gorge, man, go down there, camp, hike. It is really, really gorgeous.
Definitely.
I should get some sponsorship money from somebody for that.
The land before time.
Exactly, yeah. How has the approach? It was interesting. I read on your website that you talked about your mission is sort of doing this with the least possible impact to the tree itself. I think a lot of people would assume, and you've already corrected this assumption, but that it means like drilling into the tree and affixing it to the tree. But you are, as an arborist, trying to protect the tree and give people an experience of being in the canopy that doesn't damage the canopy. How has that changed over time in terms of your knowledge and how you approach everything?
So trees are giant plants, but they're these giant organisms that we exist around all the time, and most people really don't pay them any attention. A lot of new homeowners are shocked at once they they'll buy a house that's got like a bunch of trees, and then they were like, oh, I have to interact with these and take care of them, and they're like, there's a lot of living thing going on here.
Yeah.
Each tree species is different, and each individual tree is different, and they're not humans. And I say that because a lot of people in the tree world or people subconsciously associate like, oh, my body works like this, so a tree's body works like this, but they're different. There's been about 30 years of treehouse research been going on. Kind of the grandfathers of tree housing have been developing and inventing attachment methods, studying them, improving upon them, and I am fortunate enough to ride those coattails in a way. So, without getting too nerdy, the trees,
nerd out, go for it.
The life force of a tree. So the vascular tissue exists in the cambium, which is basically the outer layer. So like, you know, the bark and the wood just underneath the bark, that's where the nutrient flow is happening.
Yep. That's where most of the sap is flowing. That's
exactly.
Where,
yeah. So the inside of a tree is dead heartwood.
Yep.
And for construction purposes, you want to utilize and maximize the use of that heartwood and minimize impact on the vascular tissue.
Okay.
So the way that we do that is by using as few as possible really beefy bolts. So the bolt goes into the tree. It has a lot of surface area in the structural heartwood, and you're then only putting one hole. So an alternative would be to do several small holes, but we have found that actually is more difficult for the tree to handle. Another important thing to know is trees don't heal, they seal. So, you know, you get a cut on your arm and you generate new tissue. If a tree has a wound, it closes it off. So new tissue will close the decay off from the living tissue. So when you put one of those bolts in, the tree has reactionary growth. And what's super cool is right around the bolt grows extra fast, and the tree actually further and further strengthens that attachment each year, each growth cycle.
Okay.
And if you were to wrap the tree with say a chain or a rope and hang your treehouse, you would actually completely cut off circulation and kill the tree. So people see the bolt and they're like, "Oh God, like what?
What have you done to that tree?
What have you done? Why don't you just tie a rope to it? Come on!"
Right.
But in reality, that's the same thing as like you could put a needle in your arm and go on for the rest of your life. But if you tied a rope around it, you'd lose it in 2 days,
right.
or however long that takes. So
right.
it's kind of in that way, to use a human body as an example.
So are you continuing to get smarter about this? Are you guys continuing to improve your methods, or is it the kind of thing where you sort of have a set approach that you use and it's not changing year over year?
Definitely always improving. You know, sometimes in very small ways and sometimes in bigger ways, but really what it is we're trying to push the envelope with our construction. So, you know, we maybe do a couple builds that are like totally in the bag, you know, kind of feel like
you've done it before, you know exactly what you're doing.
Yeah, we know what's going to happen, and then maybe we'll do one that's like, all right, let's push it.
Okay.
And there's a lot of physics going on. You know, essentially you're building a dynamic bridge up in a living organism and then putting a house on it. And the house, so you've got, of course, gravity, and then the wind comes through and the trees sway, and that, you know, swings your house around.
All of your anchor points are moving.
Yeah. So that we use different attachments depending on how high up we are in the tree and how thick the tree is in diameter. But then, you know, you add, all of a sudden you've got this like 10 by 15 wall that is basically a sail. So now you've got like a sail up in the tree, and there's a lot of things that come into play. And anybody who enters that world is going to be learning for the rest of their life. There's absolutely no, it's way too crazy of an environment, especially with trees, like how much trees differ, to ever feel like, oh, we have a thing that we do every time and it's just the way it is.
I want to transition a little bit because, yes, this is what you do. You build tree houses, but you also own and run a business.
Yeah.
Where you have to make that business profitable and you have to manage people. How many people does Canopy Crew employ these days?
So 12.
Okay.
Yeah. 12 folks.
12 full-time people come and go. You have contractors?
Yeah. So I would say it's 8 full-time, couple of part-time guys, handful of contractors.
Okay. Are all of those people builders, or is there managerial staff, or do you guys sort of handle all of the admin stuff among the team?
So there's, I guess, a quick rough and dirty breakdown would be probably 2 to 3 office staff, 4 tree climbers / tree technicians, and maybe 5 carpenters / production manager type people who make the tree house construction happen.
When did you building tree houses turn into a business, and how did you navigate that learning process?
November 9th, 2013.
So when the paperwork was filed?
Yeah. I do a lot of being an entrepreneur is way different than I ever thought. It's so much more than I ever thought it could possibly be. And I think I do a lot of, well, basically it's challenging. Obviously you kind of gravitate towards things that you're good at, and then you specialize, and then you get used to being good at everything that you do, because people don't challenge themselves that often. With the Canopy Crew, I found myself repeatedly smacked down and, kind of put in my place. And that process it's endless, no matter how, because businesses by nature grow. And when growth happens, growing pains occur. And then it's my duty to respond to those growing pains. So, I had no idea what I was doing. I still don't, but in the beginning, certainly zero idea at all. And I just approached it like I approached rock climbing. When I was rock climbing a lot, I was project climbing. So I would pick a really difficult route, just one path up one cliff, and I'd spend a month working on it. So it would take, 300 tries over a month of repeatedly going up and falling, and like a dance, you learn the exact precision moves until you get it, until you can get to the top without falling. So I understood the process of being really stubborn and just not stopping and not giving up. And I understood the process of things happen once you stop trying to force them. So whether or not you're supposed to apply those to business, I don't know, but I did. And I just kind of went for it. As a climber, I was always okay to be bold and take risks, and I loved being the person who would just go for it. And that's exactly what I've done here. And it's totally backfired a number of times, but it's also my one and only secret ingredient that has got me here. So plenty of people have at that mentality or questioned it, certainly. Even in my own crew, but at the end of the day, that's that's just who I am.
Give some examples of things that you have done, successful or not, that you would not have done if you'd not taken that approach.
Well, so at this point, for example, maybe we've got a job. Maybe there's a giant dead tree that we need to take down that's hanging over somebody's house. At this point, knowing everything I know now, I require a whole list of tools and equipment and people and weather conditions and budget and all these things to make that happen. But in the beginning, I would just go figure it out with with 10% tools, no equipment, one person, and 25% budget,
Yeah.
So that's really just, that's kind of probably the most straightforward example of just
being willing to take it on, even if you weren't exactly sure how you were going to do it.
Yeah, because maybe you fail this time, and maybe you don't make any money, but it's still a step forward.
Right.
And out of 1,000 times, maybe that happens 100, but you then have made 900 steps forward.
Right.
So, yeah, I think I'm willing and ready to try something, so like for me, it's treehouse building. There are plenty of reasons to be afraid of treehouse building, and I never thought any of them were like big enough to not do it. And it's kind of one of those things where if I knew then what I know now, I would have never done it. There's no way I would have ever started this if I knew all of the challenges that were going to come my way. It would have scared me away, and there's no way. It's too much work.
Yeah.
But now I can't.
Now here you are.
I'm in it.
And it seems like there have been other things that you've done. I don't know where this fits into your personality and that part of it, but I mean, you wrote a book, you had a TV pilot, there you and I don't know where that stands. Maybe you can talk about that a little bit. But you've also gotten your hands into a bunch of other things that aren't just the craft of either taking care of trees in Cincinnati or building tree houses in northern Kentucky.
Yeah. So what was your question?
It's just in terms of your willingness to take stuff on. It doesn't seem like it stops at taking a tree down.
Yeah,
It seems like you're sort of like, and I don't know what part of, because just talking to you, I'd never met you before you walked in today, but just talking to you, you don't seem like a person who's necessarily clamoring for attention. But man, it like when you mention the Canopy Crew, and I don't know if you're aware of this, but around Cincinnati, people know your name, people know what you're doing, people are excited about what's going on, people are saying, yeah, they had a TV show, I don't know what happened to that thing. It's like there are different things happening. Part of that's because Cincinnati's a small town and stuff gets around, but part of it is because the way that your business has grown has been visible in a way that I don't know if you were intentional about or not.
Yeah, no, I think about that often. I have no idea how that happened.
It could be that it's just so whimsical that, like, you guys down in Kentucky somewhere building tree houses is something everybody loves the idea of, so the word gets around. But it does seem like it's more than that. So
I certainly preach the glory of trees and how fun tree houses are. No doubt about that. I have had several amazing opportunities fall into my lap, such as the book and the TV show, and at every one of those stages, I was like laying in bed like, oh, damn it. Like, I wish this was happening in 10 years when I was ready to do it, but it wasn't. So better just figure it out, Yeah. And all of those experiences have been wonderful. And, like times of accelerated growth, like with you are tasked with a job such as like writing the technical guide to treehouse building or making the show, and you have to, if it's going to be like put out to the public to who knows how many people, like you better do a good job, and that's just forced me to buckle up and like just start riding harder. And it's what's funny is now I see the bigger picture, and it's like, okay, you do one thing and it opens 5 doors. Yeah. And that never stops. Yep. And now I'm at a place where I've like got so many opportunities that I have to pick and choose because I can't do them all. Whereas before I would just say yes to everything. Right. It has been, I feel very blessed in that sense because I know that hardly anyone is fortunate in that way where they have like, it's just very lucky to have those bigger corporations come down and say like, hey, we think what you're doing is cool. Yeah. The book, for people that want to know, and we will link to this from our website at thedistillerpodcast.com, came out in 2016. It's called The Perfect Treehouse, A Guide to Treehouse Building. Yeah. Do you want to talk about the TV show? Because I'm interested to know. You had a pilot that was on the Animal Planet. Yeah, yeah. What's going on with that? Yeah, so... what was the show called? Canopy Kings. Canopy Kings. Right? Yeah. Okay. So I got a phone call, basically just random person like, hey, found you guys on Instagram and wanted to know if you'd be interested in trying to make a TV show. And I said, yeah, of course. And that process turned into this very slow but large snowball of things happening. And then all of a sudden, I don't know, a year and a half later, we were there with like 14 camera guys, and my crew was haggard down from a long year of treehouse building, and we had this amazing. I mean, it all the stars like came together because we had this perfect Shumard oak to build in, and we had clients that were like, do your craft, like make something beautiful, and we're
not constraining you.
Yeah. And I'm really very happy with how that whole process, or how the whole end product came out, because I know how close it could have come to being a disaster. It was like we were like worn down to the bone, and it just so many things could have gone wrong, and I guess some things probably went wrong, but in the end it worked out. But so basically that pilot aired. It took like 2.5 years to make it. And then it waited a long time before it went out, and then it aired, and it's been airing around the world because I have like friends in like Germany. They'll be like send me clips of me talking in German, and basically, so the TV industry is a strange and foreign place, and I think the most accurate way to put it is that we're on the back burner. Maybe it's like
so it's not dead.
It's not dead. It's not alive. I don't know, to be honest. It's basically just out there in the world. It could. I mean, they won't give us a no.
Yeah.
They won't give us a no, and that's basically where it's at.
Right.
Yeah.
No, that sounds all too familiar from my experience of they're keeping it to the time they can make the most possible money off it.
Yeah.
Is probably what it is.
Yeah.
Well, it's good to know. I mean, I think a lot of people felt like because they didn't see an immediate follow-up that it wasn't happening. It's good to know that there's still a possible future for it.
Yeah, and I mean, that's a whole other thing. I mean, that's like, well, I'm thinking about, because now, we've planning our lives around one path, and TV is certainly a whole other path, and
right.
Cross that bridge when we get there.
Right. Well, so let's talk about what is next for both the Canopy Crew and you. I mean, at this point, so you said you started in 2013. You're basically roughly, 5 years in last month, if I'm doing the math right.
Yeah.
What are you thinking about these days in terms of the future of the Canopy Crew and your role in it, and what's next in your growth path?
Well, I think that I've had a few large revelations in terms of realizing what I don't know, and realizing how much deeper I could go into this. Mm-hmm. I guess so. The first place to start is really just me thinking, okay, what kind of life do I want? Because you could put a lot of lives into business, and that's a big question. I guess I'm at this point where I know I'm still young, but I also felt life go by fast enough to know that I will be old soon. And
you blink and 10 years are going by.
Yeah. So, it's your question is one that I'm asking on an hourly basis. But to give you something real, I think my goals are to harness what I'm best at with the Canopy Crew and give myself to it in a way that it deserves. So I certainly have been giving it my all, but now I think I know a little bit better, or just learned a little bit more about what like how my time is best spent, and getting a lot better at delegating and hiring. We're actively trying to hire a lot of positions to because the growth, like we could easily expand and grow into something bigger and beautiful, but getting there is easier said than done.
Yeah.
And so focusing myself and steering the whole group of folks and everybody involved in that direction is kind of, well, I need to lay that out and make a plan. We're certainly focusing on the treehouse rentals. That's really where my passion kind of flourishes. Having the creative freedom to do my own builds in a place that I love, and also like just building for myself. There's something there that I'm gonna hold on to, and it turns into a passive income, and that's where my pulse is the strongest. Building for customers is much more challenging, and it's a lot harder to turn into any kind of money. So we're adjusting and learning how to make that realistic. But ultimately, I've got X amount of people that depend on the Canopy Crew for work. And I want to create, I want their lives to be enhanced. Obviously, I want my life to like slowly get better and better. And there's, it's my responsibility to make those decisions that are going to lead for all of us together to like learn the most we can from trees, and at the same time have things that people like money and stability and relationships and
all the stuff you need to kind of,
because like being a traveling treehouse builder is amazing, but it comes like with a lot of hidden challenges. To most people it's probably obvious, but to me I never thought about like, oh yeah, if we're on the road all the time, like, oh, when no one has a girlfriend, like shoot, how'd that happen? And we're all living in tents all the time, and
Well, it's funny because what you do is in so many ways is such a unique thing, and then when you break it down, entrepreneurship is entrepreneurship, and the challenges of starting out, taking something that you're passionate about and that this little thing that you're good at, and then if you're good enough at it, what it turns into is a bunch of things you're not good at.
Yes, totally.
Which is the running the business and the hiring the people, and I think that is the story of all entrepreneurs is, hey, I just wanted to do this thing, and now I have to do all of these other things that I either don't quite know how to do or don't want to know how to do.
Yeah, and I've it's been so soothing too. I kind of got to a point where I was drowning. Like now I know every entrepreneur does that. And then I at that point I was like, I got to talk to some other people who have done this, and started to talk to other people and read books and all that, and then I realized that I'm right on time, right on course with all the other people.
You're exactly where you should be.
Yeah, and it's like, oh, okay, this is a problem that's happened to everyone who started a small business, and
all the stuff that you're saying now about what the future looks like and the things you just said about what the next phase of the Canopy Crew is are the things that signal, in my estimation, maturity in the life of a business owner or of an entrepreneur, which is, how do I do what I can do best for the business and give away and hire somebody better than me at the things that I'm not best serving the business in? And I think every entrepreneur, it's like, the timeline of every entrepreneur is what I just described. Like, I want to do this beautiful thing. Then it blossoms into, I wanted to do this beautiful thing, but I don't want to do these other things, but now I have to. Then the next phase is, but I'm going to do it because it's the way I get to do my beautiful thing, and I'm going to push through that first phase of growing the business where I have to do everything. And then the next phase is where you are right now, is how do I step back and let other people take it and make it what it can be? And that's great. I'm going through this because as people are listening to this, I think it's really interesting to say, okay, I'm going to listen to this guy who builds tree houses and it's going to be completely divorced from my life and whatever I do, but it's not.
Oh yeah, no, totally.
This is what we all go through if you're starting or if you're running your own thing.
Yeah, and it's I think there's an element of hitting rock bottom and then like being the phoenix in there, like at that point when you're like, oh, I'm doing all these things that I don't want to be doing, and then you've got, you know, like the employee drama and the customer drama, and you're like, wait a second, I'm just a therapist. Like that's all I'm doing is it's like
all I want to do is climb trees.
Yeah.
And
you know, you get stressed out, and then for me, if my personal standard is like, man, if I'm stressed, like I'm not supposed to be stressed out. Like I'm the guy who's not stressed out, and
right.
And of course you get stressed out, and then you're like, shoot, where did I go wrong? And but out of all of that struggle comes that turning point of like, aha, I see the path, and I'm going to execute it, and it's going to be like, there's going to be grace and like persistence, and it's just going to blossom, and everything's going to be perfect. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I mean, Canopy Crew started as one company, and now it's like 5 companies, because that's just the way things go. And it just grows, and you can't stop the growth. Like it comes at you.
Well, and that's the best thing that could possibly happen is that you can't stop the growth. I mean, it's a bigger problem when when there is no growth. So that's where an entrepreneur wants to be. These guys are just about to open the doors, and we probably need to close up. The last thing that I wanted to hit on, which I think is a really special insight, is when you were talking about how the way that you approached the growth of the business was the way that you approached a particular pitch or a particular challenge.
Yeah.
And again, people that have never climbed may not know that that's the way that you do it. We were talking about the Free Solo movie, and I don't know if they cover it in the movie. I'm interested to see, but one of the things, Jimmy Chin, the guy who made the movie for National Geographic, one of the things I was most interested in hearing him talk about was the way that Alex would practice little tiny snippets of that 3,000 feet over and over and over and over and over again until he could basically do it in his sleep, and until he got to the point where he could climb that entire thing and know everything that he was going to do at every moment. And that's an interesting metaphor for someone's working life, of taking a challenge that either an entrepreneur or somebody else faces and saying, no, I'm going to keep at this. I'm going to break this code, and I'm not going to move on to another pitch until I figure out this problem. And that's, climbers call them problems.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
It's like, I'm going to work out this problem. A pitch is a problem.
Yeah. It's I think one of my favorite things to share with people who are thinking about starting a business or really doing anything is you can find a lot of solace in knowing that no one knows what they're doing. Like, it's all an illusion. No one knows what they're doing. Everyone's just at like a slightly different scale of not knowing what they're doing.
Yep.
And if you just try, you will know more about that than you did before, or than someone who didn't try.
Yep.
And there's, many, many times in my life, I've just tried something that should have not been doable, and I did it, and it's like was ugly and like needed all sorts of repairs, or like, you know, had plenty of issues, or came out at the end bloody from it, but hey, like it ended up working, so like you can't hate it that much, you know.
Right, you got a result.
So I mean, there's nothing worse than like being paralyzed by the fear of what if, you know. And whether it's business or anything, like, just there's so much fun to be had in just going for it, and like you will eventually fall down on your ass, but like that's not that big a deal.
Try it. Try something new. Right on. It's been like I said, the doors are open here at Nellie's, and we need to probably move on, but it's been a joy to talk to you, and I love hearing about what you're doing.
Thank you. This was really fun.
Awesome. Thanks, Django. Appreciate it. This episode of The Distiller was recorded live at Nellie's Tap Room, which is located downstairs at Taft's Ale House at 1429 Race Street in Cincinnati, Ohio. Taft's Ale House is a craft brewery and restaurant located in the old St. Paul's Cathedral space, which is the oldest Protestant parish in Cincinnati, and it's named after local boy and 27th President of these United States, William Howard Taft. Taft's Ale House has fantastic food and drink every day of the week. Their Gavelbanger IPA is one of my favorite local IPAs, but they've got a whole slate of beers. So thanks again to the entire staff of Nellie's and of Taft's Ale House for welcoming us in and for the hospitality. And of course, thanks again to treehouse builder, arborist, and inspiration for eternal childhood, Django Kroner of the Canopy Crew. You can learn more about the Canopy Crew, and you can contact them about tree care and maintenance, or about having them build your own custom treehouse, all through their website at thecanopycrew.com, where you can see everything they do. And of course, you can see some photos of some of the amazing tree houses they've built. We've got links to their website and social media pages, plus a preview of their reality TV show Canopy Kings on this episode's page at thedistillerpodcast.com. So please do check it out. They're great people. Django is a wonderful guy, and they're doing some really magical work. So check it out and support them. The Distiller is produced, recorded, and hosted by me, Brandon Dawson, with co-production and booking assistance from Terry Heist. Our show is mixed and edited by Justin Golden. Our logo was designed by Scott Ryan, and our videos are by Mike Helm of Minute Moments Pictures. You can find The Distiller wherever you listen to podcasts, iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, Spotify. Wherever you listen, please click that subscribe button to be notified when new episodes are released. And if you like what we're doing, spread the word by following and sharing our posts on Facebook and Instagram. And the very best way you can help us is by rating and reviewing The Distiller. No matter what platform you listen on, those mean a lot to us and help us show up in search results. So thanks for that. Remember, you can listen and download every episode of The Distiller, where you'll find links, photos of the guests, and a map of all show locations on our website at thedistillerpodcast.com. You can also get in touch with us through the contact page there, or you can email us at mail@thedistillerpodcast.com. You can tell us who you think should be on The Distiller, who you want to hear talk about their search for meaningful work, or where you think we should record the show, including if you have a restaurant or a bar where you would like to host an episode of The Distiller. Just drop us a line, whether that's by email, on the website, or on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. We always love to hear from you. So until next time, I'm Brandon Dawson. Thanks for listening to The Distiller. Bye-bye.